they think. Intelligence, expertise.
What other doors could they close?
Hey, how much am I willing to give up and commitment, and are not committed to the struggle, acquiescing to the struggle, they're committed.
Careful who you leave toeless.
Hello, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in on you. I wanted to do this live, but I wanted to share this clip of Bryce Gowdy's mother explaining what led up to this young man's suicide. And then I want to talk to you briefly about how we're failing our people by being focused on things that don't have substance. And we are not listening for the cries of help. We are so disconnected as a people. For those who don't know, Bryce Gowdy is a young man who literally had signed his letter of intent to play football for Georgia Tech. I believe he's out of Florida. And he was going to play for Georgia Tech, but his parents and his family, his mother and his siblings were going through a really, really rough patch. They were homeless and he was struggling with some things. And I'm going to talk to you about that after you listen to this clip. So listen to the clip and just take it. I'm going to tell you now, it's emotional. It's going to pull at you. But I think it's necessary for me to get the message home of how important it is for us to reconnect. We lack an affinity for one another. We lack empathy for one another. It's too easy for us to see one another struggle and be solely and intentfully only fixed on ourselves. Individualism is destroying us. So go ahead and take a look at this video clip, and I'm going to check back in and weigh in on it after you see it.
Your door's open?
I'm tired of people calling me. I know you're only calling because you're concerned. So I figured this is probably the best time to go live. Because my phone won't stop ringing. A few days ago, Bryce was talking crazy. He kept talking about the signs and the symbols. He kept talking about the signs and the symbols that he was seeing all over the place. And that he could see the world for what it really was. He kept saying that he could see people for who they really are. He was happy though. He was talking about his future. He was talking about going to Georgia Tech. And we were having a lot of spiritual conversations. He had a lot of questions. He had a lot of questions about spirituality and life. He kept asking me if I was okay or if his brothers were gonna be okay. And I kept telling him, yeah, all day. We sat in the car yesterday because we didn't have anywhere to go. And he sat next to me all day just talking. And I was stressed out. I was too stressed to really deal with it. And I kept telling him I had just started my period. We were on the streets again, homeless. The little job I got wasn't paying me all my money on time or in full. And I was so stressed out about taking care of my kids. Around 10 o'clock last night, I finally got us a hotel room. But we still had to wait for Brayden to finish working. We were parked behind Brayden's job waiting for him to finish working. And I told him, I said, Bryce, you have to dig within and fight these demons that you're fighting. I was told him I wasn't strong enough to help him right now. That I had my own demons that I was trying to fight. He was stressing me out so much that I started getting chest pains. When we got to the hotel and the two older boys went upstairs and left me in the car, and I was just trying to decompress because the whole day Bryce was just going. Bryce came back downstairs and sat with me. And I started telling him that he needed to get it together and toughen up, get his mind right. He tried to hold my hand, and I told him no, because he had me so upset, so anxious. I was like, I can't deal with that energy right now, baby. I wouldn't let him grab my hand. I wouldn't let him hold my hand. Because his energy was so intense. I could feel the pain in his soul, and it was breaking my heart. We went back upstairs to the hotel room. Brayden was already sleeping. It was cold, so I asked him. No, before that, I had my chest pain, so I was in the bathroom cleaning up. And he kept checking on me. Mommy, are you okay? Mommy, are you okay? Mommy, you gonna be okay? Mommy, are you okay? I said, yeah, I just need to calm down, baby. I just need to calm down. After like 30 minutes, I came out the bathroom. And it was so cold in the room. I asked him to go downstairs and get my favorite blanket. After 20 minutes, I didn't see him, so I went downstairs. I checked the car. The blanket was gone, so I know he came to the car, but I couldn't find him anywhere. I came back up to the room, and I saw that he left his phone and his wallet and his shoes. I sat there for a minute. I sat there for like 20 minutes just thinking like, come on, I know you're gonna come back. I know you're gonna come back. He still didn't show up. So I woke up Brayden. I told Brayden to go walk around, go look for him. Brayden left, and I felt something in my soul. I just started bawling, crying. And then Brayden came back without him, and I started bawling, crying some more. Brayden was like, calm down, he's okay. But I knew in my heart he wasn't. His dad, he talked to his dad yesterday, and that's when it got worse. It got worse after he talked to his dad. Before he talked to his dad, he was just talking for a few days, just talking about, just in circles, just talking about life, about the things that we were going through as a family over the last couple of months being homeless, the things that he had to see me go through because we were homeless. But after he talked to his dad, he started getting paranoid. Like, he asked him to walk across the street to get me a ginger ale, and he was paranoid. Started talking about not being trapped by doors and mirrors. So this morning when he disappeared, I texted his dad, and I was like, I wish you would disappear from our lives forever. In that moment, I knew something was wrong with my baby. And I cried myself to sleep. I woke up 7 o'clock this morning. That was at like 4:30. I woke up at 7 o'clock this morning, still no Bryce. I started calling everybody. Nobody heard from him. No friends. Nobody heard from him. I called my brother, and my brother said he was going to start making phone calls. My brother called me back, and he said there was a report that somebody got hit by a train at 4 in the morning. In my heart, I knew it was my baby. I called the hospital. They wouldn't give me any information on the phone, so I went to the hospital, and I couldn't stop crying because I knew it was my baby. I knew it. Brayden kept telling me he wouldn't do something like that, but he hasn't ever acted like how he's been acting for the last 3 days. Finally, the nurse walked up to us with a piece of paper in his hand and said, "This is the number of the detective. We ID'd the body, and it's Bryce Gowdy. My baby walked in front of a train and he killed himself."
Anything else on you? She was on Facebook Live.
I've been begging for help for months. For months I've been begging for help.
Okay, hey, I'm back. Now, it's easy to get caught up in the emotional intensity of this video. You have to understand, this lady is literally talking hours or maybe even minutes after she's identified the body of her son, who felt there was no way out, and the only solution that he could come up with was to take his own life in one of the most horrific ways that you can possibly imagine. But what I want you to do is pay attention to the things that led up to this. What she's explaining about his behavior is, with what little information I have, is explaining the behavior of someone who is experiencing a psychotic break. A psychotic break is simply a point in time when your ability to mentally process a stressful event reaches its edge and you no longer can make sense of it. And there's a break from reality, a break from what you would consider normality. And it normally ends up with some sort of negative behavior. And it can happen in a number of ways. Some people have a psychotic break, hurt people. Some people have a psychotic break, hurt themselves. Some people have a psychotic break and totally divorced from reality long term. What gets me about this is that it came to this. There's a point where she says, I've been asking for help for months. Now, I don't know her story. I don't know what she's been through. I'm not championing her decision making. I'm not championing her work ethic. I don't know all of that. I know that she mentioned she had a job and she was trying to work. But what I want to talk about is she is not an anomaly. She is not someone who is an abstract representation of something that doesn't happen often. She is what is becoming more common. She falls in the same line of Diana Elliott, someone else that I stood up and I spoke for when a lot of people were trying to drag her because of what happened with her son. My thing is, we live in a world that purposefully marginalizes us in the area of finance, economics, and resources. It leaves us to fend for ourselves while purposely pushing us closer and closer to the edge of extinction. And we are not responding to it. We are literally sitting back and all we see is where we're at. We see our high 5-figure, low 6-figure income. We see our home that we've purchased. We see our car we've purchased. We see the mobility that we believe we have in a society that's slowly squeezing the life out of us, but we don't see it because we haven't been trained to see collectively. We see individually. We see where we're at. It doesn't bother us until it's us. They've been shooting us dead in the street for years, but I don't get calls about that until it's that person and then they're on my phone or they're emailing or reaching out then. But it's been an issue for decades. It's been a serious issue for the last 15 years or more. And it's not a problem until it lands on your doorstep. Same thing with Diana Elliott. There was a cry for help, but nobody was listening. And I'm not here to point fingers at specific people, but there are some questions that pop up when I watch that. I'm not going to bring them out because, again, I'm not here to point the finger or blaming anybody. This is not what we need to do right now. But we need to answer some questions. You know, how can a person, you know, be in that situation and there's nobody? You know, how can a young man be forced to face that type of pressure at that age and try to be put in a situation where he has to figure it out? You can hear her talking about how much of a negative force the energy he was emitting because he had reached a point where it simply did not make sense. And then there's a point in the beginning when she's talking about he had become disillusioned. In other words, he was seeing the world in its darkest state. He was seeing the world in its darkest identity. He was disillusioned. You know, the idea of morality, the idea of positivity, the idea of prosperity, all the things that are being sold in large sums in this country. He saw the other side of it. He saw that it was more people suffering than it was living prosperity. It was more people in poverty than it is living in prosperity. It was a situation that he was trying to come to grips with, but there was no answer for him. And when he needed an answer, we failed him. And I say we, and I know most of us didn't have a clue, but I can guarantee you it's somebody in your periphery, somebody in your community, somebody in your family that's going through something right now that needs your intervention. And your intervention isn't, I will pray for you. I'm keeping you lifted. God will make a way. And this isn't taking a shot at God. This is taking a shot at the fact that God designed us to be actively engaged in making change come about, actively engaged in bringing about better situations for ourselves, our family, our loved ones, and the community we reside in. A responsibility to stand up and meet the challenges head on. We are failing because we're so consumed with self that we can't see the suffering of our brothers and sisters. I'm not a person who has lived a perfect life. I've made some poor choices. I've made some poor decisions. And so I am able to look at people and see them outside of the poor decision making. I'm not saying she's made poor decisions. I don't know her story. I know she needs help. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the best we can to help her from where we're at. And this is so long and and I refuse to say too little too late, because she's still alive and she still has children. But we could have did a lot better if we would have been, as a collective, responsive. In other words, I didn't know her, but somebody did. And if we can get to a point where we're collective, where somebody knows somebody that knows somebody, that's the thing. Our opposition has that. Every other group I can think about has that, where someone sees someone going through something, say, hold on a second, I can't fix it for you, but I know somebody, or I know somebody who knows somebody. And it's always an attachment to a resource. No matter how many people you got to go through before you're actually at the resource, there's a link to the resource. We don't have this connectivity that's inherent within our community, where that is a link to the resource. I can't imagine the amount of pressure of this young man trying to make sense of a life that's completely unraveling before him. You know, he's probably been told about God a lot, but he's trying to come to grips with how God could allow his mom to go through what she's going through, how God could allow him to be disconnected from his father in whatever way is going on, because, you know, you're here and homeless and you're on the phone with your father. That's some questions. She mentions calling her brother. Again, I don't want to throw blame because I don't know the story. But I know that there's got to be a way that we're helping the people who need help in our community. We have to understand that we cannot depend upon a system that is designed to destroy us to be the saving grace for our people when we are at wit's end. We can't sit around and be expecting the enemy to save us. That's our job. It's our job to rise up and meet the needs of our people. We've got to do this collectively. We've got to do this in an organized manner. We've got to stand up. We're so busy blowing our horns and tooting our horns and poking our chests out about what we're doing. And then we've got this happening. We're failing. I don't think it's anybody right now that can sit up and champion and say, hey, man, I'm doing my thing and I got this thing on lock. Because that should not have happened. That should not have happened. It can't happen on our watch. This cannot continuously be. Well, we've got our people throwing up their hands, and it's happening far more frequently than it has happened at any other time in the past. The numbers are bearing it out that suicide among blacks is on the rise. Suicide among black kids from the age of 5 to 11 is the highest among any kids in that group. And that's never happened before. We've never led any demographic in suicide, but 5 to 11, we lead it now. And then teenagers is on an upswing. What are we allowing to happen that our babies are so defeated that they can't see anything worth living for? There's so much that we need to be able to do that we're not doing. And we could talk about it all day, and that's not why I'm here. I'm here to ring your bell, to wake you up, to say, hey, we need to do something. I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm working with a couple of partners down the East Coast to determine what it is for my level of expertise and what we have in way of resources to be a resource to the family there. And my partner is definitely going to be doing what she can do from her end. you know, and she's a business partner, but we are working together to deal with this social issue. And she is unbelievable. And I've got some people that I'm going to be contacting here with me to see what we're going to be able to do. But it's not an isolated incident. We've got to get ahead of this. We don't want to be reacting all the time. Somebody's dead now, so we are having to take action. What if we would have took action? What if we would have been in a position to take action before this became an issue? What if we would have been actively involved in helping her find a place to stay, get him the help he needs? Because obviously he was dealing with some mental issues toward the end, and we don't know what led to him. But what if we could have been there for him? What if we could have heard the silent cries of another mother that was overwhelmed? That's the question I have. Look, I'm gonna get off of here because we've got work to do, and I'll just leave it at that. Again, for those who want to support the work that we are doing, the links are going to be there in the description box. You can give by going to the site, or you can give by going to our Cash App account, and all that's in there. All I'll say is we've got work to do, and it's going to be up to you to decide, you know, how you are going to be a part of the solution. But we can no longer sit back and depend on our enemies to do for us what we need to be doing for ourselves. On that note, I'm out.
Something that's part of your intellect, it's part of your obtained knowledge. In other words, you talk with a different vernacular than white children. Free labor. Guess what? We only make up 13% of this country's population, but our young black men make up 51% of the prison population. What's different between you and them? Nothing. They set you up for the okie doke and you thought it was cool and you took it. You think everything is about fun. I sit up and I watch this. This is what I deal with all the time. While y'all are out on your phones playing games, they have their kids at gun ranges, preparing. They see you as the enemy, and they're prepared to engage you in every way. While they're training tactically for anything that happens, we're driving by spraying our own community and hitting nothing but innocent children. They're preparing to hit what they shoot at. Academically, we get whatever is left over. Use your ears. If you allow anything to come,
you said math? All type of knowledge like science, mathematics, things like that?
Common sense.
You said math? Math?
Get off the streets, go to college, go to high school, get education.
But you know what? Y'all laughing, but that's serious though. I understand we want to laugh, have a good time, but it's truth in what he's saying. It's changing our whole direction. It's self-love, dealing with each other on that kind of level. Because we keep going like we're going, we're going to extinct people. You know what I mean when I say that? We're not going to be here no more. We in prisons, we killing each other to get stripes in the hood because we've been taught to be this way. So we're here to let you know that it's been a lie this whole time. Don't fall for the lie. I wish I was 8, 9, 10, 15 years old and knew everything that I know now, because it's been a whole different course. But now
anything has an impact. If everything you see is about clapping, popping, whatever the latest term for shooting a gun is this week. Because it's, you know, I remember it used to be wedding. It's been clapping, you know, popping a cap, banging, whatever it is that tells you that's what we're supposed to be doing with each other. Put that crap down, because that's purposely been put there to get us to kill one another. Because see, every time a black man takes the life of another black man, that's 2 black men that they don't have to worry about. The one that's dead and the one that's in prison. And they have found a way to continue slavery in prison. This is how. When slavery ended in 1865, they started a process of incarcerating, putting in prison, black men at a high rate. And then they started a program called convict leasing. In other words, that's what businesses came to the state and say, I will pay you $50 per man per day for them to come out and work on my railroad, for them to come out and dig my ditch, for them to come out and do it. That's why you see those old movies, those dudes on there, they're doing the railroad. Those are prisoners that private companies paid for to come out there and do work. It's called convict leasing back then. Well, it kept on going. It went on through what was called Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws were laws that were put in.
Intelligence, expertise.
What other doors could they close?
Hey, how much am I willing to give up? Stand commitment and are not committed to the struggle. Acquiescing to the struggle. They're committed